Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, as someone who loves independent film, and especially science fiction, I love it when people can make movies and tell stories that don't necessarily overstep the bounds of the genre and constraints that they're in. And I think that makes for some beautiful work. And guess what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with, once more, as always, my name is Dave Hewlitt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are listening, keep listening. And subscribe. Hit subscribe to that podcast. Give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, and probably a few other places that I've forgotten about. In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that kindness, come by and pay us a visit. We'd really love to see you. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. On this episode, we are diving into, well, my favorite thing in the whole wide world. It's a little bit of science fiction. New film that is out in theaters tomorrow, and it's Canadian to boot. It is called Levels, from writer-director Adam Stern, and it's the story of a man who, after witnessing his girlfriend's murder, his perspective and things start to change, and he risks everything, even sort of his grasp on reality itself, to discover what the hell's actually going on. It borrows from a lot of different genres, but it does it exceptionally well, and it's really a well-crafted, well-made film that I had a lot of fun with. Like I said, it's from writer-director Adam Stern, starring the likes of Canadian talent like Cara Gee, Peter Mooney, Aaron Abrams, and the one and only David Hewlitt, who we got to sit and talk with about his role in the film, sci-fi in general, and so very much more. It was really a fun talk. And if you're listening on this opening night on Friday, November 1st in Toronto, I'm going to be hosting a Q&A with Peter and director Adam Stern after the 6 p.m. screening at the Scotiabank Theatre in Toronto. So come check it out. Go to the movies. Support Canadian cinema. Have some fun on a Friday night. But first, I'm going to talk with David Hewlitt, because between me, it's a darn good one. All right, well, man, obviously, first off, just, man, thank you so much for the time today. I mean, and congrats on Levels, man. I'm telling you, when I see sort of independent sci-fi that is smart and doesn't shit the bed on special effects, it makes me
That's
very
great.
happy to see
Isn't
that.
it great? Well, that's because Adam is a VFX guy. Like when I heard this was happening, the whole reason why I was so excited to be a part of it was because, look at his track record. He's done like all this amazing stuff. And the VFX nerds are gonna focus on the VFX, and that's what you want, right? So,
So,
who
I mean,
cares about the acting? Just
that
get
that
to the
that
cool
that
special
leads to the
effects.
question, though, like, was this an offer? Was this a read? Like, when did this project sort of first come into your orbit?
That's a good question. It was I know the producers, and they sort of mentioned it in passing that there was some sci-fi stuff, but people are, I mean, this it's so funny. Like, I mean, I'm the sci-fi guy, right? So there's always people are always like, yeah, I got the sci-fi movie. I'm like, yeah, whatever, let me know, whatever. And then this came up, and they sent me the script, and I was like, oh my God, world builder, yes, I am God here. You know what I mean? Like I had a lot of fun with that. So
Now, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, especially when you're jumping into this, because obviously, especially with this script, I found it like it was borrowing a lot from certain elements, but it was definitely giving it its own sort of freshness
mm.
and edge, particularly with the love story. And I mean, what was it about the script, maybe sort of in particular, that kind of drew you in?
I mean, well, like I say, I'm a sucker for science fiction and action. I just
Right.
love that stuff. I'm one of those annoying actors that it's like I always consider the acting the boring parts between the special effects. So or the horror or the whatever it is. But so I just love being a part of that kind of thing. But I love there was a sort of a humanity to it that I really liked. I knew the actors and I knew how good they were. So that makes a big difference. I mean, Aaron Abrams is just the most wonderful villain.
Oh,
Like
for
he's
sure,
just,
yeah.
oh God, that guy is just, I love that guy. He's so cool. It's like I was like, when I grow up, I want to be cool like Aaron Abrams. And then Peter and Cara are just this beautiful dynamic and just wonderful people to work with. God, it sounds like a love fest. But it was kind of. I mean, we just, we really enjoyed ourselves out there in Winnipeg, and um, we had a director who just really knew his stuff, knew what he wanted, and yet still let us do. Weirdly, you do what you want, and that's exactly what he wanted, which was just kind of wonderful. So,
Is there weight on you? Because obviously, as someone who knows the genre so well, like, because I mean, you're the guy in the chair explaining everything, and
I'm always,
that is such a classic staple.
how did I get stuck with that? Like, I remember that I've got this great story about being on a plane with RDA, MacGyver, as I would call him, and I'm flying in for the first day of shooting of Stargate Atlantis, and he's sitting beside me on the plane, and I'm like, do I say hi? Like, I'm about to work. What do I do? It's MacGyver's right there, but I was like, okay, I'll leave him alone. He's not talking, so I'll leave him alone. And I pulled out my giant pilot script for the thing and start going through it. I'm highlighting the lines. I'm jotting down notes. And he sort of looks over a couple times. He's got the sense he's looking over. And then he reached in his bag and he pulled out these two little fax sheets. And they were his lines for the next episode. And he scratched out the first one, circled the second one, scratched out the third one, and turned to me and said, if you get them wrong, they stop giving them to you. and I never listened because, of course, I didn't get the lines wrong. So they just gave me more until I think it became like almost it's become almost a competition to see how much people can get me to say in a small period of time. So, but I love it. I've got to say I grew up on Doctor Who, so I love the sci-fi explanations.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads into my next question, though, because obviously, like, you were a fan of Doctor Who, and you've gotten to work with Del Toro. Does
Yeah.
being a fan kind of pigeonhole you, or does it just open you up to sort of these myriad of different opportunities?
I guess honestly, I think that's an interesting question. I never really thought of it as pigeonholing. I just thought I was lucky. I feel like I get to work on the stuff that I love. So
Right.
I mean,
You're not planning to go do Shakespeare anytime soon, is my point.
no, not really. Although my son's studying it in high school now, and he's like, "Have you ever done this?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess I haven't. Damn it, I'm not a real actor." I've always loved film. I've always loved film and TV. I love the naturalistic elements of film and TV, and also, you can get some pretty stagey with that stuff as well. But my first love was always film. So I feel like in film you have an opportunity to do things to sort of try to get it right, if that makes sense. It's
Totally, yeah.
hard with indie film. It's a bit like theater in itself. Indie film is where you're like, look, we got two takes, and then the sun's down, and we can't. So so it becomes very theater-like in that approach. But I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. I never really thought of it as pigeonholing. I always thought of it. I mean, it is pigeonholing. Absolutely, it's pigeonholing. But for me, it's always worked for me because I have this sphere of stuff that I enjoy working in, and then and that's opened up. Like, I wouldn't have been in Oscar award-winning films if it wasn't for my sci-fi background, right? I mean,
Right.
I met Guillermo working with Vincenzo on Splice. That's when
Yeah.
we first met. So that wouldn't have happened without Cube, without Stargate, without all these things. So I feel I'm definitely in my comfort zone. It's nice to get out every so often and do play a dad or something. But it's yeah
I'm curious to ask because I mean, obviously, you've got this long list of credits. I mean, you've done a bunch of stuff, but the job changes like on a job like this versus maybe doing a one shot on a TV show versus
Mm.
something like Stargate where you're getting 100 episodes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the world is. It's so weird being the old guy now. You know what I mean? Like I still feel like the 16-year-old kid who's like, wow, this is great. But I've got to this point now where I've seen the stages, the way things have worked, and film it's in a tough situation now. Like, I mean, it's got to be made fast and cheap, and the money is at the top, and it doesn't generally trickle down the way it used to. I mean, but at the same time, I'm also like a business nerd, so I like the idea that we're in interesting times, because interesting times means we're going to have to come up with some more creative stuff. I've been really excited about things that I've seen on YouTube with like the liminal space horror and all these, interesting new approaches to storytelling now. I just think there's so many interesting opportunities out there for stuff. So So I can't remember the name of I can't remember the question now, but before I start pontificating about the future of film, you know.
No, but I mean, like this film really does bring up so many different ideas about like what people a lot of people are scared about
Yeah.
when it comes to the advancement of technology and entertainment and all this different kind of stuff. But it really
Mm.
does feel like, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one of those things where it's easy to sort of jump in and go, ah, this is technology, ah, it's scary, it's bad, it's going to take our jobs. But at the same time, it's like, if we look even further, it's like, well, no, but if we do this and if there's a tweak here, it really feels like just sort of the advancement of some of these technologies, like you kind of say in the storytelling space, is creating some interesting opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, I think things change. It's the one thing that the one constant is change, right? I feel like, when I hear people and or myself complaining about, oh, why isn't it the way it used to be? It's because it's not the way it used to be. Like
Right,
it's,
right.
I feel like, when it comes to the I mean, I'm a tech optimist. I always have been. I always just assumed that,
Yeah.
but that's become that the tech optimist has become the tech bro, and I think has sort of discarded the need for they now talk about making the world better without actually making the world better. I like the idea that technology would make the world better. There's going to be pluses and minuses to all this stuff. I don't have the same sort of fear towards AI and the idea of virtual reality stuff. I mean, this film's a great example just because I feel like it's science speculation to some extent.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the very fact that the reference I like to make the most is like when you're playing a video game and there's something over there, but your screen's not looking at it until you turn to look at it. And quantum mechanics is exactly the same. Until
Yeah.
we turn to measure that thing, it doesn't exist. So there's all sorts of wonderful theories about the fact that we may be living in a simulation because if the universe is old enough, then there could be millions of civilizations, and if their civilizations are advanced enough to be creating simulations, there must be billions of simulations. So chances are we're living in one. There's really fun stuff that goes, and this is what I love about science fiction is you get so sort of excited about the possibilities of this stuff. It's the
Now,
first stage of engineering, the
now, I
dreaming.
mean, I guess that dovetails into another question though, because you've had both experiences. You've had long runs on TV shows. You've had one-offs. You've jumped into independent film. You've done big productions. At the end of
Mm,
the day, is there a preference as an actor? Because I mean, I
yeah,
can imagine
absolutely.
sometimes having sort of the day shoot can be a little freeing and sort of less exhausting rather than sort of being immersed in a character over like a 6-year arc.
I mean, there's definitely benefits to both. Both. Some of my happiest years were working on Stargate, and that was 5 years of some of the hardest work I've ever had to do. I mean, like every week you were learning, basically, 100 pages of 100 pages of script. I mean, not learning, but you're familiarizing yourself with that sort of amount of story on a weekly basis. I loved it. It's a challenge. It's to me, it's like a workout. I mean, and I hate workouts, but I, it's like a mental workout trying to get this stuff right. But honestly, my preference is the tiny indie film stuff. That's what I grew up with. I mean, I started working with my working. I mean, and it was playing, but we were 13, 14 years, well, no, probably a little, maybe like 14 or 15 years old. Vincenzo and I were at school together, Vincenzo Natali, who went on to do Cube. And we were making little films together in high school. And we loved it. I've spent my entire career trying to get back to that because I loved that. I loved that, there were no breaks, that there were no, we would just anything we could do to get this film made, within reason, obviously. I love that. I think, I'm so jealous of artists who can grab a blank canvas and paint a painting and then their art is done because unfortunately film and TV stuff, it just requires so many people and so many resources to happen. The smaller you can make it, to me, the more exciting it is to me.
Well, and I mean, especially when you get a chance to work with people like with Peter and Kara, and I mean, like with
Oh
Aaron,
God, they're
who is like Aaron, like if you let Aaron chew the scenery, he'll do it. I mean,
oh my God, isn't he great? Like he's
yeah,
just like he's the most wonderfully villainous villain, but it's he's having fun, which and then you have fun, and I was so impressed with him. And intimidated. He's just one of those people who just has that innate sense of cool to him that I've never had. I've always been the idiot who trips over his own feet when he enters the dance hall. You know what I mean? And he just has this wonderful sense of himself that I'm so jealous of. And then Cara and Peter, oh my God, they're just first off, they're like brilliant theater actors unto themselves already. They're just, they've got the whole brilliant acting thing handled. And then they're just the most lovely people to work with. I still couldn't get over it, So yeah, I really, levels two, bring it on. I'm there, I go back to my favorite Denny's in Winnipeg. I think I've eaten every single thing they've got now. I was working my way through the menu.
Now, I mean, I'm curious, like, does for you, like, how do you sort of label yourself? Because I know you've written a bit and you've done some directing, but at the end of the day, how do you see yourself going forward in this business? Because I mean, especially now in the landscape, it does feel like if you can mount it, cheap enough and efficiently enough, you can get someone to buy it. And I mean, it's going to be one of those things where it opens up again, like we were saying, kind of these opportunities for different kinds of
Mm.
storytellings, if only because of the myriad of streaming platforms that are just hungry for content every day.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, I've seen it's interesting. Like during the boom of the streaming stuff, there was a lot of money spent on projects, and that was wonderful. Like we got to do I did things like Cabinet of Curiosities with Vincenzo and Guillermo, and then C with the Apple folks. I mean, and Momoa. I mean, like it just so there's a wonderful that's amazing, but that's something that happens maybe once a lifetime. I mean, like
Right.
there are these. I guess there was a boom when I started in the '80s. There were a lot of MOWs and that kind of stuff. So that was fantastic. So I was there for that as well. But I feel like you say that I mean, in a weird way, my wife and I have arguments about this because my wife is a film producer and loves film and loves going to the theater and stuff. I love film but I don't love going to the theater anymore. I watch most of my stuff at home. I tend to focus on horror now because horror and science fiction because they surprise me. Unfortunately, sometimes how bad they are, but I'm at least I don't know who's going to live and who's going to die, and they tend to avoid the formula to some extent. But as you say, I feel like I'm actually moving more. I'm fascinated by the YouTube world because there's whole new storytelling approaches being taken there. There's whole genres that we've missed because we're not 14, 15 years old of horror and filmmaking that's happening on YouTube. Like I was just introduced to this liminal horror. Have you heard of this?
Yeah. No, no, no.
It's interesting. It's this idea of the horror of in between spaces, of spaces that like
Oh, okay.
malls that are empty, and it's very sort of Five Nights at Freddy's, very video game kind of influenced stuff. But there's the most famous one is something called the Backrooms.
Cool.
And the Backrooms is just a really interesting. It's like some 16-year-old kid who made a video based on a creepy picture he saw, and then discovered that there's all this lore behind it. And the thing like that's new. That's a new thing to me. That the kids are so focused on lore. They love all the backstory to things. Like they can see a film or then not so much a film, usually short, because God knows you have to sit through a film. My son once said to me that watching a film was as bad as me having to read a book when I was a kid. Which is so depressing. But the idea that they've got this short form content that they're then more interested in diving into the what's behind it. What does that mean? What is this? That's an interesting opportunity to me. Like maybe who knows? Maybe I'll be a YouTuber when I'll retire and become a YouTuber. Maybe that's my future.
Is it a little surreal for you though? I mean, especially with some of these young genre content creators, because I mean, a lot of them grew up and saw you in Cube and
That's weird.
saw you
Yeah.
in Scanners too, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how that stuff comes back. Like, you know, there's always that stage where you get a little bit past something and then you can be a little embarrassed about it and you could sort of like, let's talk about what's going on. Happy over here. Look over here. And then as you get older, you start going like, there was a certain charm to that. I mean, the funny thing is I watch the Scanners too. I watch those movies. I grew up on those movies. I am, and I'm sort of a part of it for some of these people, which is fascinating. Pin was one that came up again today in another interview, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that was my first real film. But because I've been working with my friends on films in the summers and whenever we had free time, I was so lucky. I'd got sort of the training off camera on camera, if that makes
Right.
sense. These
Right.
little films that no one had seen, I got to learn the craft to some extent. But yeah, I again I feel crazy lucky. Like I just don't know how you end up. Like who picks this as a career and then it works out? You know
Not
what
a
I mean?
sane
Like,
person. No, sane people don't do anything in the entertainment business.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
decided that a long time ago.
Yeah, and it's and that's but again, and the entertainment industry is something else that I think people talk about levels, so many levels. Is that I think there are parts of the film industry that I love and parts that I hate, and I think there's a weird Hollywood thing at the top which makes everyone weird. But down near the bottom here with me, there's all these little things going on, and that's the stuff that really excites me. Is the sort of the indie, the entrepreneur almost approach to the auteur version of making stuff is very, very
But you know
exciting.
what? I mean, I think you're right. And I think this is kind of working on both extremities. Like,
Mm.
because on one end, if you've got no money, you've got the freedom to try stuff. If
Yeah,
you're on the other end of the spectrum with a proven track record like Guillermo, fuck it, go try stuff.
yeah, yeah. But in between, there's there's money, and
Yeah.
as soon as someone else is bringing the money to a project, you've lost control of that project. I mean, unless you have the ability to just be the biggest raging asshole that just demands and can demand that, and people will put up with it. I've been an actor for too long. I found directing very tough because I just want to please people all the time. Oh, okay, fine, that doesn't work. We'll just go over here and do this. That doesn't work as a director. You know what I mean? Like it's I think there's an art to it. I am so well, and also there's a weird thing as you get older, you find your place. Like I have fought being an actor since I first began. It just feels silly to me as a job. I'm a son of a doctor and a nurse and then a PhD, and then my mom went to university and became a PhD in history, and like they do sort of important things, and my whole family was all sort of medical family and stuff. So I'm pretending to be doctors on television. It feels sort of frivolous, but at the same time, I think I've got to the point now where I go like, well, no, that's what I do. That's my job, and I think it is a job. I don't think it's a talent or anything like that kind of stuff. I think it's just something you do something long enough, you sort of get a knack to it, and the more you do it, the basically there's always something new to it. I mean, I was lying bleeding in an alley the other day, in Grimsby, and having fun doing it.
Right, of
Like,
course.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, so,
Now, I mean, just to put a bow on this, I mean, I guess the $1 million question is, and this is something I'm always curious about because, again, going through your list of credits, there aren't a lot of gaps. Like, you are really the definition of being a working actor. Like,
yeah.
what is the secret to not having those gaps?
I think well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like there's going to be more gaps. I'm always worried about gaps, I suppose, to some extent. I think the biggest thing for me was I got to a point working on a show years and years ago that I was miserable, absolutely miserable, long before Stargate, and so disillusioned with the whole way the industry worked that I quit. And I went off and I did IT for like 2 years.
Right.
I self-taught IT, programming, network engineer stuff. Just loved it, loved it. Got paid nothing, but loved it. And then came back because there was a role playing on a show called Traders, playing this crazy derivatives nerd, basically. So I realized, oh my God, you can get paid more to pretend to be a nerd than to actually be a nerd. And but when I went back, I promised myself that if I was going to go back to the industry, that I have to play it on my terms. Like if I don't want to do something, I can't do it. Like it breaks me if I'm working on stuff that I haven't got a reason. And sometimes I have to make up reasons. Admittedly, there's some stuff where I just go like, look, you know what? It's you come up with a reason why you have said yes to this for yourself. But even just for me, I think it's having other things to do. I think it's just having this. I have been like I'm like obsessed with lifelong learning. I think that's something I got from my parents. I sucked at school. I never got out of high school, but I always enjoyed reading and learning stuff. And now the internet's here. It's like a freaking, it's like a giant rabbit hole of learning. So I'm quite happy not to be working. I
Yeah,
think that makes a difference.
I've got to imagine that's a fascinating thing because, on one end, and I'm sure this is sort of the actors debate in their head constantly, going, "Okay, well, the script is shit, but I get to learn
Mm.
X, Y, Z while I'm doing it, so okay, I'll go do
I,
it."
and I think that's a big part of it. I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, look, go back to levels for a second here. Levels for me was I've got this wonderful VFX artist who's written a script and has all these amazing ideas for what he wants to do with the visual effects and the concept. I've got actors who I just freaking love. I get to go to Winnipeg and hang out and live in a Denny's when I'm not working at on set, and I get to play these crazy, fun, wonderful characters. I mean, I think it was Michael Caine who said that it's art, location, or money. And I would add friends, because I think friends also make a huge difference. If you're working with people you like, it's a whole different experience. I mean, a completely different experience.
Well, I mean, I can imagine. And I mean, because I mean, I'm just on a personal level. I loved Swearing Jar, and I know that was
Oh yeah, yeah.
for you. And I mean, just to see your career, like I'm glad you've kept sort of those Jaws 4 and Michael Caine moments to a minimum. I mean, you're having fun doing it.
Look, I don't always have fun. Just ask my wife. I'm complaining all the time. I mean, the joke with my friends is if I'm not complaining, I must be dying. Because I'm constantly trying to fix the world, in my own way, I suppose. But because the industry is it's a bizarre. It's especially in Canada. It's a weird industry.
Sure, man.
I wish money wasn't involved, because I feel like you could just do short films the rest of my life. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. We sit around Tim Hortons and talk about our short films. No, it'd be perfect.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I mean, that was my joke when I was a kid. I was just like, look, as long as I've got enough money for breakfast, out.
Right.
So as I go out for breakfast, that's all I need for my career. My wife's like, maybe you might want to set your goals a little higher.
Lunch, dinner,
Yeah, maybe go to lunch and dinner, and maybe be able to pay that for the family as well. So, but yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting perspective there. I hadn't really thought of it until you brought it up. That I guess there's sort of a bit of a war of attrition, I think.
Well, man, there's levels to everything. Got to bring it back down.
There you go. That's it. Oh my God, I forgot. On set there were like levels jokes all the time. So
I love it. But I mean, one David to another man, just keep up the good work. And I mean,
thank you so much
on this. And I mean, just again, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh God, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Likewise.
whenever.
Right.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk. Right. All the best.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.